Okay, now you can relax. We'll start the talk. Now, in our discussion of the Buddha's fundamental teaching on the Four Noble Truths, or the Four Arya Truths, the Sanskrit term Arya literally means noble, and when one's meditating on the path and advancing on the path, at the point where one gains direct realization of reality, at that point one gains a direct realization of 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So until then, our understanding of the Four Truths is sort of at an intellectual level. It's not this direct, how do you say, intuitive or heartfelt realization. So they're called Arya Truths because they're true for a being who's an Arya, who has achieved this level of realization. And so we just, in English, we translate to noble. It doesn't mean that these realities themselves are noble. I once read a book written by an English couple, both declare themselves as Buddhists. It's a book about Buddhism. And at the beginning of the book, they talked about the Four Noble Truths. And it began by talking how suffering is noble, how the cause of suffering is noble, which was totally ridiculous. But these writers, in fact, they were even quite proud of declaring that they had no personal teachers. Their knowledge was from reading, etc., and their meditation. But there is no way suffering and its causes can be considered to be noble. But in her description, she invented reasons why, suffering is noble. I think one reason was if we didn't have suffering, we couldn't realize the opposite of suffering, like happiness and liberation has to have an opposite, noble suffering. It was ridiculous. Okay, we'll leave it at that. I did not complete reading the book. In fact, I think I burnt it. Anyway, yesterday we discussed very much in depth the first of the truths, the truth of suffering in relation to human beings. As you know, the rebirth states are presented in three levels: the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. So those are the three realms of cyclic existence where we have been in past lives, and they are all under the domination of karma and disturbing emotions. But there are levels of suffering and levels of unhappiness. So humans are more or less in the middle, where we can experience great physical and mental suffering. We can also experience great physical and mental bliss and happiness. Humans and whole beings, animals, etc., they belong to what's called the desire realm, where the dominant cause for rebirth in the desire realm is desire or craving for sensory pleasure. The form and formless realms, the predominant cause for rebirth there is desire for the pleasure of mental absorption or meditative states, which are many levels. So the practitioner, say as a human, to achieve a form realm level meditation, they temporarily suppress all desire for sensory pleasure, and the whole mind is focused upon the peace and the happiness of higher levels of meditative absorption. So in doing that, they create a cause, a karmic cause, to sometime in the future to be reborn in such a state of meditative experience, a blissful experience. And so there are many levels, in brief, 4 levels of the form realm, where one has a physical form. It is more subtle than, say, our human forms. In the formless realm, the mind still has a very, very subtle physical support of wind, but there is no gross body at all. So within the desire realm, in terms of greater happiness and pleasure, above the humans, there's what we call the level of the asura, and then the suras. So the sura is a divine being or a bliss being, and there are 6 levels there. They're the highest of the rebirth states in the desire realm, and in between the suras and the humans are the asuras. So A is negative, which means not gods, and the Tibetan equivalent for the term is even more explicit: neither men nor gods. This is the asuras. Okay, so just briefly, we'll talk about their problems. So, in physical science, those who are born at an asura level, they're smaller than the suras, they're less intelligent, and they fight amongst themselves. So that's a problem. Their pleasures are much greater than humans can experience, but nowhere near as great as the suras, the pleasures experienced by the suras who are levels above them. And so they have great jealousy and craving to achieve the pleasures of the gods. And they have very close karmic connection with the gods, like they communicate, and in fact, they go to war with the divine beings in the 2 sura levels, which are said to share the world as their environment. So they're actually in the world, but karmically, as we are not aware of hungry ghosts, we're not normally aware of asuras and suras. So the 2 sura levels on the world are called the heaven of the 4 great kings and the heaven of 33, which is said to be the abode of Indra, and the 33 are his 33 close ministers or close companions, whatever. All right. So, this jealousy that the asuras have, and this craving for the pleasures, leads them into battle with the asuras above. They never win. They can, at times, the asuras can be having the advantage in terms of the battles, but they never completely defeat the asuras. And actually, in the Abhidhamma, it says, during those phases when the asuras have the advantage in their battles against the asuras, at those times there is, because of the karmic connection all the beings on this world have, at those times in the human realm there's great disharmony, war, disease, famine, and so on occurs. And at times when the suras have the advantage over the asuras in these sort of never-ending battles, human society experiences periods of peace and abundance, and things are going well. I read that in the Abhidhamma Kosha and I just thought it's interesting information. I mean, there are parallels, aren't there, with so many other cultures, belief systems. In Europe, the Greek gods and goddesses. A lot of fascinating parallels in the presentation of the relationship between humans and the divine beings. Sometimes there is communication. So, in Buddhism, that's possible. So, back to the Asuras. During the battles, while the men are fighting battles and dying, those who are left behind, the elderly, the women, the children, they can actually, there is particular lakes where they, I guess a bit like television, they can see what's happening in the battles, and they can see their brothers and their husbands and their fathers being wounded and killed in battle. So there's great, not only are the warriors suffering, but the people back home are too. And it's said that when the Asuras are more victorious, they plunder the Asura cities, they steal their beautiful women and their children. And so, this is going on. It's not happy. In the notes, the Asuras can practice a spiritual path, but only to a limited degree. Their karmic obscurations prevent them from seeing emptiness. The Suras are capable of greater spiritual practice, and they can even achieve the realization of emptiness. Okay. Then, in regard on the next page, in regard to the suffering of the Suras themselves, well, those two in the heaven of the four great kings and the heaven of the 33, they obviously suffer fighting with the Suras, with the Asuras. They can be wounded, and they can even be killed. But they can only be killed if their heads are severed. If their limbs are severed, that through their karma, their limbs will grow again, and their wounds will heal. So the only mortal wound for Asura at those two levels, we have there to be decapitated. So there are four remaining desire realm gods or Asuras, and they live in more ethereal abodes, and they have no suffering with fighting with the Asuras. There's no battle there. They have no lack of material things. They have no hunger, no thirst. But they do experience suffering because they have their own political and social problems, and some can be banished by the more powerful ones in society. It's a bit like what's happening in America. President Trump, how he dismisses and fires anybody who's against him. They're banished from the White House, they're banished from government because the more powerful president doesn't like them or perceives them as enemies. So there's this banishment. So this even happens in the God realms. So that's a problem. There's the misery of loss of status, and then as their karma, this happens to them all, even the ones who have greater power within the Sura society, all of them, eventually, their karma for that incredibly blissful existence begins to wear out. And as it begins to finish. So, at that time, they become aware that death is approaching. They do, through karma, have a clairvoyant awareness of their past life where they created the causes for their present blissful situation. And they also have clairvoyant awareness of future lives where they're going to be reborn in lower levels. But even that awareness that they're going to die and they're going to be reborn in a less pleasant state, that is not sufficient to motivate them to practice Dharma. Things are still so good that their complacency is so powerful, and the procrastination, etc., that they cannot motivate themselves to practice Dharma. When death is actually approaching, there are distant signs, what are called preliminary or distant signs. The bodies lose their natural radiance, their healthy shine. They become agitated, restless, unable to sit still in one place. The flower garlands that they put on their bodies, which always remain fresh and beautiful, they begin to fade and to turn brown. And their robes, which aren't made by tailors, but the robes that they wear spontaneously appear with their birth. For the first time, they start to become soiled and creased. And we might think, oh, what's the big deal? Well, for God, for a seer, it's a big deal. Because they've been totally involved in sensory pleasure. And just as we see, our clothes, and if there's a stain on our brand new suit or dress or whatever we buy to wear to an important occasion, we're mortified. I can't go to the party. Look, it's ruined. And we're a bit like that. For the first time, their bodies start to sweat and to smell. And they're beautiful friends. Everybody is so delightful. But because of this, the beautiful friends don't want to be near them. And so they're not banished, but they're exiled to the periphery of society, to the periphery of the cities, and their friends won't even come near them. Then, as death is much closer, their bodies become much less radiant. Water remains on their bodies when they wash. Before, it would roll off. It would never stick on their bodies. And even the beautiful jewellery, which initially made delightful sounds whenever it was rattled, now unpleasant sounds. And their eyes start blinking. Again, what's the big deal? Well, for us, it's not a big deal. But for them, it's terrible. It's said that during the final 7 days of their lives, the Suras, and those days are much longer than a human day, those Suras experience more unhappiness than humans experience in an entire lifetime. Okay, so that's the Suras, or the divine beings of the desire realm, and then of the form and formless realms. Those beings only experience the result of virtuous karma. There's none of the first two types of suffering. Remember that the suffering of suffering and the suffering of change, that does not occur. In fact, they don't even experience mental happiness, certainly not physical happiness. Because, or in the formless realm, I'm talking about the formless realm, they don't even have bodies. So their feeling in their mind is complete peace, equanimity, stillness. They too, in the formless realms, their karma eventually expires, and that existence, that experience which has gone on for an incredibly long time, just comes to an end, and they have no choice but through karmas created from past lives, whichever are strongest, they can be reborn in any level. There's not a specific level where they will be reborn. It can be back in the formless realm, it can be in the form realm, or it can be in any of the desire realms, according to the individual's karma. All right. So that is the general presentation of the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. The next point, which I briefly mentioned yesterday, is that the four noble truths, or the four Arya truths, comprise one set of cause and effect on the impure side of afflictions, and one pure side of cause and effect on the path to liberation. So purity, in as much as that the second set of cause and effect, the true cessations, or the truth of cessation and the truth of the path, there is no manifest ignorance, no affliction. Now, each of the four truths, Buddha presented for each one four characteristics, and these characteristics encompass or give us a clear idea of what the truths are. And these 16 altogether, these are the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths that are only fully realized upon attainment of the path of seeing, the wisdom directly realizing emptiness. So as we have in the notes, the true suffering, the first noble truth, refers to every aspect of our karmically acquired body and mind, except when we have meditation on pure love, compassion, wisdom, and renunciation, so on, these virtuous minds. So when those virtuous qualities are generated in meditation, like we ordinary beings, we temporarily suppress the ignorance, the anger, attachment, the afflictions. The seeds are still there, but they're not manifest. So when we meditate in love, compassion, in that way, that state of mind, that meditation is not a true suffering, because it has not originated from karma and afflictions. True suffering includes the environment, because our environment is a product of karma and afflictions, as well as those aspects of our body and mind coming from karma and afflictions. So the first qualities are, first of all, change, constant change. Whatever arises from causes and conditions has the nature of moment by moment change. So we did mention it yesterday that the fundamental teaching of Buddha is encompassed in the mantra. Those who do the morning practice of Lama Zopa Rinpoche recommends. You know the mantra, Om Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetan Tashan Tatagoro Hayavada Teshan Chayo Nirada Ivam Vada Mahash Maniye Soha. So that is that we call it a mantra, but it's actually a teaching that was given at a time when Buddha's disciples were gathered together, and Shariputra, we know as a famous disciple of Buddha, well, he was just a new boy in the group, and I think he'd asked, "What is this Gautama Buddha? What is he teaching?" And one of the elder disciples of the Buddha, he spoke the sentence, regarding dharmas, or dharma with a small d, refers to things, regarding things that arise from a cause, the Tathagata, the one gone beyond, the Buddha, the Tathagata taught their causes and also their cessations. Those were the words of the great ascetic. So that's the meaning of Ye Dharma Hedu Prabhu Hedun Tasan Tadagato Haiva Teshan Chari Nirida even Vadamash Manies. Well, not the Om and the Soha, that they were sort of added to make it like a mantra. So, causality is the essence of Buddha's teachings, that whatever we experience in terms of suffering, unhappiness, the world, is a result of causes and conditions. And nirvana, enlightenment, the pure side, the realizations of love, compassion, wisdom, etc. on the path, these are the results of causes. So causality is the fundamental teaching of Buddha. When Shariputra heard that sentence, it is said, he immediately achieved the path of seeing. He immediately realized emptiness and became an Arya being. And then it's said that he taught his friend Moggallana, the other, you see them on either side of Buddha, holding the monks' staves and things. And Moggallana also achieved that level of realization simply on hearing those words. So change. Whatever we experience has its causes. And the root causes are karma and afflictions. Now I just think I've been receiving quite a few emails from a distressed mother in Australia who is separated from the husband, and they have one child. He's about 5 or 6. His name is Bodhi, very nice name. And there is the usual domestic conflict between the ex-husband and his current partner, and her, and bringing up the kid, and well, you're probably aware of the type of situations that we get ourselves into. And I've been trying to compose a reply which isn't going to upset her. Everything's causative, karma and afflictions. And each of the individuals involved, herself, the ex-husband, husband's girlfriend, and the little boy, they are experiencing confusion, misery. They just don't know what's going on. They don't know how to be happy. And, from an external point of view, it's so clear that that confusion is just coming from their minds, and it is, if it is understood why they're angry at each other, why they can't be happy, why there's jealousy and conflict, etc. If they could only understand that, all of the problems which she lists in email after email will be resolved. I mean, she knows Dharma, but she doesn't know how to apply this fundamental teaching. And we too, we know Dharma, but do we apply it to our lives? I once said to a group in Australia, if you are unhappy, you are not practicing Dharma. This was a group of Buddhists, right? And it's true. Dharma is the solution to unhappiness. Because Dharma is the opposite to karma and afflictions. So that we should look for the cause of our unhappy, disturbed social situation in here, not out there. Not in the heart of somebody else, but in here. And that's not, you're bad, you're evil, you're guilty, you're horrible. That is an indication that we can do something about it. We can resolve this situation by changing our own mind. We cannot change the mind of our ex-partner, our ex-partner's friends, even our children. There's conflict with children. But we can change our own mind. So change is liberation when we understand whatever arises from causing conditions has the nature of moment-by-moment change. So really understanding impermanence, we use the term impermanence, that will cut attachment to the illusion, the wrong view of our five aggregates, our body and mind, being unchanging. This clinging to the belief of that I am an unchanging entity and the situations are unchanging. That's the source of all our suffering. I'm not picking on this lady, but her mind has been unable to grasp the reality that she is separated from her husband. Her husband has a new girlfriend. And the same, the husband, he has trouble, and the girlfriend has trouble, unable to, what's the term? To go with the flow of life. We, like if a river's in flood, and then all the sticks and branches block the water, so the water swirls around in a circle. It can't flow freely down the riverbed. So problems are temporary blockages in our mind stream through wrong views, mistaken view, and we get caught up. We use the analogy of a vicious circle, a whirlpool of thoughts and worries, thought patterns that we just can't get away from. We drink alcohol, we look for entertainments and distractions everywhere else, but when we go to bed at night, those thoughts come back round. We just can't stop them. This is the suffering of being unable to go with the ever-changing flow of life, of existence. We've got to accept that and go with the flow. I think this is relevant. Before I ever met Buddhism or thought about Buddhism, friends and I were in Afghanistan, and anyway, long story, but we wanted to get to Karachi, Pakistan, and we decided to get a little boat and go down the Indus River. And it was an incredible experience, not just the physical reality of drifting down this enormous river through the Punjab, the desert of northern Pakistan and India. But the experience, but we were also interested, what had initially attracted me to Eastern thought was Taoism. I'd read, encouraged by a friend in London, I'd had a book called The Words of Chuang Tzu, who was a Taoist poet. So it was the poetry of Chuang Tzu, which was translated by, interestingly, a Trappist monk called Thomas Merton, who must have understood Chinese. And so this poetry, the poems of Chuang Tzu, had an incredible effect on all of our minds. They hinted at the flow of the Tao. It's the energy of life, which was revolutionary to our way of thinking. And then being on the Indus River, mostly, we had a sail, but the wind didn't blow very often, so we just drifted with the flow of the river. And we had no idea where we were going. It's a vast river, no maps. And we'd been warned of all the terrible people, the dangers, etc., etc. But we went anyway. And, or, as the river goes, you never know what's around the next bend. It was a fantastic experience to see what's around the next bend. And, different things would appear, and adventures we had. And so combining what I sort of intuitively felt about Taoism and the harmony of not resisting the flow of life, the Tao, was so true, so real, so powerful. And we were living it. In fact, the name of our boat, we called it the Tao Indus. Later I met Buddhism and things happened. Impermanence is so important, and it is a current that flows throughout Eastern thought, and we should pay attention to the Tao. All right, change. Second aspect of true suffering is misery. Our bodies and minds are in the nature of misery because of being under the control of karma and afflictions. Karma is unreliable. And afflictions cause so much distortion of reality, of our world. My friend in Australia, her view of her ex-husband is distorted by anger, attachment, still attachment, mixtures, jealousy towards the ex-husband's girlfriend, and then their view of her is distorted by their jealousy, their anger, their pride. This life under the control of karma and afflictions is not true. Not true. Just the term "not true." In Australia, our first Dharma centre was Chinrezi Institute, north of Brisbane. And the first teacher that Lama Yeshe invited to be the teacher, our first FPMT centre in Australia, was one of his classmates, Geshe Loden. And so I'd been ordained for about 4 years now, so I was the teacher at our second centre, Tara House in Melbourne, and we invited Geshe Loden to come and give some talks to the people in Melbourne. And Bonnie, she was an American nun, Kunchok Dharma, she invited Geshe Loden to see a film in the theatre. Geshe Loden had never seen television, had never seen a film. This was his first experience of like a film. And so they're sitting there, and she took him to see one of the Vietnam movies, those really powerful Hollywood movies about the Vietnam War. Forget which one. But killings, heavy stuff. And Geshe Loden was looking at this, and he was saying, "Kunja Dhamma, not true, not true, not true." And people in the audience would say, "Shut up, be quiet, will you?" Fantastic. Geshe Loden's reaction, not true, the film. Okay, same thing, our lives are not true as they appear to us. There is something happening, but we cannot take what we see as reality as being true. It is distorted by our subjective mind. And it's miserable from that point of view. It's not reality. So in the notes we'll say, our contaminated environment is not a continuous source of happiness. And this overcomes the misconception that true sufferings, food, music, beautiful scenes, physical touch, perfumes, etc., are pure, clean, and blissful. This is what's not true when we go to buy this very expensive perfume or food or clothes or entertainment. It is not true in that there is pleasure, but that's the suffering of change. Okay. Third point, emptiness. These impure aggregates are empty of being a permanent, single or partless and independent self, which refers to a self-powered person who is independent of the aggregates of the body and mind. So they're empty of being the objects of use of such a self. This concept of a self is a mistaken concept generated through intellectual idea. We're not born believing in a soul or an Atman in Sanskrit. The concept of a soul is a me who is separate from this body and mind, who possesses this body and mind, who will go to heaven or hell when the body and mind die. So this is an intellectually acquired wrong conception about self. Buddha's teachings are un-Atman, which means not Atman, not soul. There is no such thing as a self who is a separate entity from the body and mind. And this is said to be like a shepherd and the flock of sheep. So the shepherd is separate from the flock of sheep, but the flock of sheep go wherever the shepherd wants them to go. Well, mostly, not always. So this concept of a self is a me who is separate from the body and mind, but who is in charge of the body and mind, who is making the body do this, that, and the mind think this, that, but separate. So that is a superficial, wrong conception of I. So emptiness means that we are empty of existing in that way. The fourth point, selflessness, is more subtle. This refers to a self, the misconceived self, who is part of the body and mind, exists in relation to the body and mind, not separate as a shepherd and the sheep, but as an entity who exists in my own right, who belongs to the body and mind. And the illustration or the example is given like a head salesman, right? So you have a big department store and there are many salespersons who work in the store, but they have a boss, the head salesperson. So the boss is part of the employees and not separate from the employees. So this is more subtle belief of the self, a real true me who abides within the body and mind. Sometimes we see our real true self as being more of the body. You know, we check our reflection in the mirror before we go out to the party. Or how do I look? Oh, I look okay. Body. Or our mind. If, you know, we crack a funny joke at the dinner party and people all laugh, think, I am so intelligent. So, we more identify more with our humour, our sense of humour, our intelligence, our wit as me. So it's much more subtle, and it can oscillate between them. So we are selfless, or the aggregates are selfless, in they do not constitute a self. They're not a self that appears self-sufficiently, which means independent of causes and conditions, and imputation. And substantially. Substantially means being able to appear to mind without depending on the appearance of something else. Right? So if something substantially exists, if we are aware of it, we see it as it is. It can be viewed, known, the thing itself. That is substantial existence. And we believe that there is a true, real me here who can be known as I am, in my own right. That's wrong. There's not even a self like that. We're empty of existing in that way. All right. There'll be more about this as we get on to the true path. True origins, the 4 points of the true origins. We have talked already a lot about these. We don't have to go into more detail, like karma we taught last weekend, or the previous weekend, and the afflictions. So the strongest affliction is craving. Craving for existence, craving for life, or for self. So the 4 points of our true is cause. Craving for the self, this falsely imagined self, is the root cause of the impure aggregates, impure body and mind. Just as a seed is the root cause for a fruit. Right? If you want to eat apples, you have to have an apple seed. Put it in the ground and you get, that is the root cause of apples. Or mangoes, if we want to be in the tropics. So this dispels the wrong conception that things occur by accident, by bad luck, or without a reason. Whatever exists on the impure side or the pure side has a root cause. The root cause for all the things on the impure side is craving for self-existence, this self-grasping conception. The root cause for everything on the pure side is the wisdom realizing emptiness, or the non-existence of a truly existing self, an inherently existing self. Now the exact opposite of the root cause of everything on the impure side. And we are living on the impure side, so the causes, the root cause of all of our suffering is the constantly arising our personal karma and our disturbing emotions. Second point, in true origin, is source. They are sources. Karma and afflictions produce suffering in its forms again and again, continually, like a source or a spring of water in the mountains. Continually flows. No matter how much water you collect in a bucket, take it away, still it's continually flowing. So craving for life or rebirth is the main factor in producing the body and mind, just as a fruit arises from a sprout. Right? So the root cause was the seed, and then the root cause for a fruit is the seed. Then the next cause is the sprout. If the seed doesn't germinate and you don't get a sprout, you won't get your fruit. So the analogy here is the sources refers to the sprout, karma and afflictions. When we understand this counters the wrong belief that suffering has just one cause, a permanent divine creator or permanent time. And these were two beliefs, for philosophical beliefs or religious beliefs in India at the time of Buddha, that Brahma was the permanent, unchanging creator of life, or that there is some principle, this eternal principle of life. It has a Sanskrit name, but I forget what, is the cause of existence. But no, it's karma and afflictions. The third quality of true origins, karma and afflictions, is strong production of suffering. So again, craving for rebirth or craving for life is the immediate cause of the body and mind. Just as the flower is immediate cause for fruit. So we've had the seed, we've had the sprout, and then upon the sprout appears a flower. And the flower is the immediate cause for the fruit. Okay? So, true origins, karma and afflictions, cause not just an unbroken stream of suffering, but they ensure that it's intense and frequent. So this is strong production. And finally, the fourth point is conditions. Karma and afflictions are conditions for suffering because craving rebirth and life is also a cooperative condition for the aggregates, the body and mind, such as the physical aggregates, earth, water and so on. And so they are the conditions for producing the fruit. So, the flower is the immediate cause of the fruit, but flowers won't produce fruit if you don't have the conditions. The water, the rainwater, the minerals from the earth, the sunshine, and so on. Those are the conditions. And interesting, like, as you know, in Australia, we have so many droughts. And in the forest, the eucalyptus trees, our monastery is surrounded by forests. I think for the last 10 years that I've been observing, the trees produce flowers, or that they produce the bud just before the flower comes, but it's so dry that all of the buds fall off and they don't actually create a flower, and so there's no seeds. So it's so sad. You know, in the early spring, the trees come into bud, and all the birds, all the insects, the bees, so many creatures depend upon the forest flowering. But year after year, the ground is covered, literally covered in these unopened buds of flowers, because there's no water. Absolutely no water. It's terribly dry. And that means the birds have disappeared. The insects have disappeared. The spiders have disappeared. You know, I can remember back in history, normal wet springs and summers, and there is so much activity, and bird activity, and life, and these spiders, not scary spiders. Well, some people get scared. They're not there anymore. It's so quiet. There's no food. They're gone. They're dead. The only good thing is that there are no mosquitoes, which is amazing. We are about 8 years ago, we had one incredibly wet spring. And there were so many mosquitoes that in the town of Bendigo, which is a very large town in Victoria, you could not buy mosquito repellent anywhere, in any shop. And they were there 24 hours a day. You virtually could not go outside. They were such a nuisance. And in the rooms. But since then, the dryness has taken over and no mosquitoes. So, well, maybe I rejoice from my selfish point of view, but the birds, the swallows, and so many birds depend upon insects to live. And it's true, the swallows have disappeared. These beautiful birds that fly around. Anyway, so that the fire is conditions. So not only at karma and the afflictions, the immediate, the immediately prior cause, the flower, the immediate prior cause for a fruit, but flower is not enough. There also has to be water and sunshine and minerals from the earth, which are cooperative conditions for a good fruit to come. The farmers have to fertilize the ground if they want a good crop. So that's the 4 points of the true origins. Then true cessations. So now we're on the cause and effect side of the pure side. So the realization of emptiness removes all afflictions forever. That's why it's the root of the pure side. So the first point is cessation. When we generate the direct realization of emptiness, there is total extinguishment of suffering and its causes by its antidote. Bondage of samsaric existence has come to an end. Free will, at last. We're no longer trapped in the jail of karma and afflictions. This counters the view that there is no liberation from samsara, which was a view held by a school of philosophy in India at the time of Buddha. That you just got to live, suffering is natural, it's part of it, you just got to live with it, there's no cure. But he said, no, it's not true. There is a cure because there is a cause, ignorance, and that cause can be eliminated. So the next point is pacification. True cessation is the total extinguishment of suffering by its antidote. Because the torment of afflictions is abandoned and the mind is at peace. So that in some of our meditations that we've been doing, watching the breath, remove the activity of distracting the thoughts, and the natural peace begins to shine out. We experience this natural peace and stillness of the mind. That's natural. That's not created by the wisdom realizing emptiness. That is allowed to manifest by the cessation of disturbing emotions caused by wisdom. So now, we really think about that. In meditation, we suppress the disturbing thoughts, and by focusing strongly on the object. And we experience the natural peace, but it's temporary because the disturbing thoughts have only been suppressed. And once we stop the power of meditation, they manifest again. And so that we lose that experience of peace. But true cessation is true pacification because the seeds are destroyed forever. They cannot come back. So that's the next point, auspiciousness. True cessation is highly auspicious as is no superior source of happiness. Right? This counters belief in a higher state of liberation. Such is the bliss of single-pointed concentration. Or a belief that some people at the time of Buddha said, well, liberation must be so boring. There's no, you're just always there in peace and happiness. You know? And it must be a boring experience. But there is no greater peace and stillness and bliss of the mind, and, well, it is said not to be boring. Definite emergence is the fourth point, which, having achieved cessation of karma and afflictions, samsaric existence will never return. And this stops the belief that liberation is temporary, it's reversible. Then the four aspects of the true paths. In general, the true path refers to the Eightfold Noble Path. Specifically, the true path refers to the wisdom directly realizing subtle selflessness. So this wisdom is the path because it causes one to proceed to liberation. Right? It is the path, the mental path, which you follow towards liberation. And this, understanding this, opposes the assertions that there are no paths to liberation from samsara, from cyclic existence, which some people believed at the time of Buddha. The second point is suitability. This wisdom, realizing emptiness, is suitable because it is the exact antidote to the self-grasping ignorance. It's the opposite. So this counters the idea that it's not a path of liberation and something else is the true path. It is achievement. The third point. This wisdom, realizing emptiness, unmistakably realizes the nature of the mind and definitely leads to the achievement of liberation. This counters the belief that worldly concentrations or extreme asceticism and so on are paths to liberation. You know, we've all heard the stories of, in the ancient times, even present times in India, people put spears through themselves and all sorts of activities to harm their body as being a source of purification. I've seen Penang, again, way back, before I met Buddhism. I know a lot of Hindus had a parade down the main street. And I was astonished that these people, that they'd put needles and pins right through their bodies and they'd put strings to them and they'd pull heavy cuts along the road and like through their cheeks. And, unbelievable things, which as a doctor and as certainly not as a religious believer of any religion, I thought this was utterly ridiculous. Horrifying. But it still happens, but that is a mistaken. They're genuine in the belief that this suffering will purify negative karma, but it doesn't. Unfortunately, it's a mistaken belief. So, this third point, achievement, it is the wisdom realizing emptiness which will purify karma. Because it stops the cause. And deliverance, this wisdom leads to irreversible liberation, the extinguishment of all sufferings and their causes. Okay, so those are the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. They're to be meditated upon, to be reflected upon. Because even if we don't subscribe to those strange philosophical mistaken philosophies and religions, if we check out, our mind has those mistaken beliefs from past lives. There are tendency, and even as we practice and we meditate, we can start to feel that, these extreme activities and there is no true suffering, etc. All of these, the mistaken beliefs which these 16 points negate, one after the other, they actually can appear in our mind during our meditation, during our Dharma practice. So beware. Don't think this is a critique of others. It is a critique of the incredible plethora of wrong views that exist right in here, in our own mind. And watch for them. Watch for them arising during your meditations and your practice of Dharma. Doubt is not removed until you gain the direct realization of emptiness. And that doubt can eat away at your confidence, eat away at your understanding, and lead you into one of these 16 wrong views. So, this teaching is not a condemnation of others. It's a condemnation of karma and afflictions, in particular afflictions. We have the potential for all of those mistaken ideas. All right. In the notes, I've given you quite a lot of detail about the 6 root afflictions and the 20 secondary afflictions. We're not going to go into discussion of those in great detail because you've had it before and you can read it anyway. But it's good to have the information. So, in general, and what we saw, a mental affliction is a mental factor. It is a state of consciousness in our mental consciousness. I'm not talking about the sense consciousness, but in the 6th sense, the mental consciousness. So it is an aspect of our thoughts, our mind, the nature of which is disturbing. Whenever an affliction is manifesting, whether it be hostility or attachment or jealousy or pride, it has a disturbing effect upon our mind in general. The mind is not at peace. It is agitation, and depending upon the strength of the affliction, it can go from mild agitation to extreme misery. And so this disturbing nature prevents that mental peace, that natural mental peace, from manifesting. So the single root affliction is the self-grasping ignorance, or sometimes we hear the 3 poisons, or the 3 root afflictions: ignorance, hostility, and attachment. And then these can be expanded into the 6 root afflictions, which are presented here as 5 views, 5 non-views, and 5 afflicted views, beliefs, or attitudes. And if you want to expand them even more, there are 84,000 afflictions. I once, way back in the 70s, attended a teaching by Geshe Nawandagi at the Tibetan Library in Dharamsala, and he explained the 6 root afflictions and 20 secondary afflictions. And then he said, and next is the 84,000 afflictions. And he began to describe them, and then he laughed and said, well, we haven't got time. But these are all elaborations of the root afflictions. What is it? 16,000 associated with ignorance, 16,000 associated with attachment, 16,000 associated with hostility, and 16,000 from all three. I think that's 84, yeah? Something like that. So just in brief, because after lunch I want to talk about the true path in terms of that, the diagram that you have in the notes, which is like visually, a diagram is very useful, and it gives us the chance to have more than just the words, but something to attach our words to. And I was going to ask if we got a whiteboard, and I can do it here, but the room's too big and whiteboards are too small. I'd love to draw it up for you, which is the best way to teach. I mean, I think all of us, we learnt at school through the aid of the whiteboard or the blackboard in my situation, way back when I was at school. And it's a good way to learn. But we don't have that luxury at the moment. So attachment, as you know, the object of attachment is our mind observes a contaminated object, right? Something arisen from karma and afflictions, sees it as attractive, and wishes to acquire it. That's the fundamental of attachment, clinging. It is a non-aversion to samsara, a non-aversion to cyclic existence. It grasps an exaggerated attractiveness of the object and wishes to not separate from it. It wants the happiness of experiencing the object. So, non-aversion to samsara, non-renunciation, in other words. Now when we go down the street, we go to the new shopping centre, and we look at the displays of all, the clothing, the household goods, the food, well, particularly the food area, and we're looking, what do I want? Oh, that's good. Oh, that's better. We are seeing true happiness existing in those objects. Everything in the shopping centre is a true suffering. We don't see it that way. No, I will be if I buy it for myself, or if I buy it for my friends, for my family, this will give them true pleasure. This is good. Is it good? Really check out. It's a true suffering. So each time we label good on something, we are deluded. We are not manifesting renunciation of samsara. Our mind is in a state of non-aversion to cyclic existence. So aren't we bombarded by the advertising and by the social pressure to have this brand but not that brand? And it's terrible. But we are manipulated by society and by ourselves and by our friends to see pure goodness in a label, in a brand of a particular type of object. And advertising agencies spend so much money, so much time exploiting our non-aversion to samsara, our non-renunciation. And we fall for it. And we buy it, we spend all our money, and we really believe this is going to make us happy, but it doesn't. Well, you know the story. I really don't have to go into this. in too much detail. Of course we have to survive. Of course we need good food, clean food, to be healthy. I've given too many talks, but I think I gave the example one time. In Australia, when Lama Zopa Rinpoche was visiting, and I was wondering, what can I give him which will make him happy? And I thought, well, not a possession, but I thought an avocado. Avocado is like the big thing in Australia. So I gave him an avocado. And Rinpoche said, oh, thank you very much. Why did you give me this? Why? And I instantly understood. If I'd replied, because you might like it, was the wrong answer. But I couldn't think of the right answer until I left. I mumbled something. Because the right answer, because it's healthy. It's good for your body. That would have been the correct answer. Then you would have been happy. I'm glad I didn't say, because it would make you happy. But that's what we do. We just automatically believe, oh, this will make me happy, this will make my children happy, make my mother happy, my father happy. Some material object. But that's the wrong purpose. We should give things to others because it's good for their body, good for their mind. And of course, sometimes happiness is good for the mind. Right? Somebody's depressed, it's good to give them chocolate or flowers to make them happy. And then a little bit of Dharma wisdom, all right? Because if they're not happy, they'll say, don't talk to me about karma, don't talk to me about afflictions, the problem's out there. He, she did something bad to me, you know. But if we can make them happy, then their mind is more open to reality, to common sense. And, you know, the Buddha's teachings fly in the face of common sense. But what we call common sense. Definitely, the source of problems is out there, not in here. And so, to accept that there are conditions out there, but to accept the root source of my problems is in my own mind, we have to be relatively peaceful, happy, to go into that and to begin to accept it. Now that takes time. So attachment, we really have to check up how attachment manifests in our mind, because it's not easy to get rid of. Anger is easy. I mean, the faults of anger are pretty obvious. It's horrible. We say stupid things. We hurt others. We smash things. I told you yesterday about how we can kill our relatives or knock the house down just to hurt our husband or our wife. Did you read in the news last night? A Canadian man has been sent to jail because he got $1 million of his from the bank and he burnt it so his wife couldn't get it, who he was divorcing. And he was sent to jail for destroying the currency. And that was a beautiful illustration of what I just told you. And I read it on the Google News. Anyway, think about it as you partake in food to keep your body healthy over lunchtime, and we'll talk about the true path after lunch. So thank you.